So, the French Revolution, right? They overthrew a king, stormed the Bastille, but the story definitely didn't end there. In fact, that's when the real fight for the future of France truly began. The revolutionaries themselves split into two groups, the Jacobins and the Girondins, and their conflict was about to get ugly.
And that's the big question, isn't it? France finally gets rid of its king, becomes a republic, so why in the world did they immediately start fighting each other? Well, it all came down to one thing. What do we do now? Okay, so picture this. The year is 1792. The king is out, France is officially a republic, and it's being run by a new parliament called the National Convention. Their job was basically to invent a new country from scratch. Now, most of these guys were young, they were super passionate, but their ideas on how to build this new France were just worlds apart.
Pretty quickly, two main factions emerged, each with a totally different vision. You had the Girondins, who were the more moderate group. They mostly represented people from the countryside. And then you had the Jacobins. They were the radicals, and their power base was right in the heart of Paris.
Let's break down what the Girondins believed. Their whole vibe was, okay, we did it, the king is gone, the revolution has gone far enough, let's calm down and build a stable society. They really valued personal freedom, the right to own property, and, law and order. And a huge part of their platform was a real fear of the angry, unpredictable mobs in Paris. And the Jacobins, they had the exact opposite take. For them, it was, the revolution has only just begun. They believed that the needs of the nation as a whole were way more important than any one person's rights. And those Parisian crowds the Girondins feared, the Jacobins saw them as the true guardians of the revolution, and they were ready to do whatever it took to push things further. You can see this clash perfectly in how they approached a really basic issue, the price of food. The Girondins were all for a free market, just let businesses do their thing. But the Jacobins saw the poor in Paris starving because bread was so expensive. They demanded that the government step in and set price controls to keep food affordable. This one issue says it all. It was the Girondins' belief in economic freedom versus the Jacobins' demand for radical action to help the poor. So who were these powerful people in Paris that the Jacobins championed? They were known as the sans-culottes. The name literally means without knee breeches, the fancy pants that aristocrats wore. These were the working-class folks of Paris, shopkeepers, craftspeople, laborers, and they weren't just a random mob. They were organized, they were radical, and they knew how to use street protests to bend politicians to their will. They were the muscle behind the Jacobins. So you've got all this tension simmering between the two groups. But then one issue came up that would push their conflict past the point of no return. What should they do with the captured King Louis XVI? The Girondins urged caution. Their argument was, hey, let's let the entire nation vote on this. If we just execute him, every other country in Europe is going to declare war on us. But the Jacobins? They were having none of it. Their demand was simple and brutal. Execute him and execute him now. He's a traitor, and as long as he's breathing, the Republic is in danger. And in January of 1793, the Jacobins won. King Louis XVI was executed by guillotine in the middle of Paris. This was a huge victory for the radical faction. It sent a shockwave across the world and massively boosted the Jacobins' power and influence inside France. Riding this wave of power, the Jacobins helped create something new, the Committee of Public Safety. Now, on paper, its job was to defend France from all its enemies, both inside and outside the country. But what it really became was a small, super powerful group dominated by Jacobins, which gave them almost total control over the army, the police, pretty much everything. After that, things moved incredibly fast. In the spring of '93, the Jacobins started openly accusing the Girondins of being traitors to the Republic. Then, on June 2nd, the sans-culottes made their big move. Thousands of them, armed, surrounded the National Convention. Their demand was simple: arrest the Girondin leaders. Backed into a corner, the government gave in, and 29 Girondin politicians were arrested on the spot. And with their rivals out of the way, the Jacobins' victory led to the darkest, most violent phase of the entire revolution. They took full control and passed something called the Law of Suspects, which basically let them arrest anyone they even suspected of being an enemy. Special courts held quick show trials, where the accused had almost no rights. This was the start of the Reign of Terror, a period where thousands of people, including those arrested Girondins, were sent to the guillotine. So how on earth did they justify this?
Well, the most famous Jacobin leader, a guy named Maximilien Robespierre, explained it like this. He said, "Terror is nothing more than speedy, severe, and inflexible justice. It is thus an emanation of virtue." You see, in their minds, they weren't bloodthirsty tyrants. They honestly believed they were using violence as a tool to purify the nation and create a truly equal society. So, how do we remember these two groups today? Well, the Girondins are often remembered as the ones who defended moderation, personal liberties, and the rule of law. And the Jacobins, they're remembered for their absolute fierce commitment to equality, but also for the brutal, violent extremism they used to try and achieve it. The whole story of their conflict leaves us with a huge question, one that's just as relevant now as it was back then. When does a passionate belief in creating a better world cross the line and become a dangerous excuse for violence? It's a question that really every generation has to grapple with.